Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jay with Faith Evolved, where I talk about all things spiritual, metaphysical, philosophical, and mental health. Welcome to my channel. If it's your first time here, thank you very much for joining. And please check out the videos section and see if anything I have resonates. If you enjoy the content, please like the videos, please subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get notified anytime I release any new videos. But don't let this be the bellwether. Don't let this be the example video that you watch first, if you can help it, because this is going to be a very controversial topic that I'm discussing today. This is going to be very polarizing, and to be frank, you have to have a certain level of integration, maybe even, dare I say, enlightenment, to really fully get the gist of this video. This video is not here to say, it's the end-all, be-all on this discussion, on this topic. But I was struck by something that I saw today, and I, typically frequent Drudge Report, not because I'm necessarily on, the right or the left politically, or conservative or liberal. I can't be defined. I can't be boxed into a certain political ideology, or pretty much any kind of ideology. It's still evolving as time goes on, hence the term Faith Evolved. So like I said, things are always evolving, including my opinion on this very topic, because I sometimes struggle with, first of all, what do I think of this topic? How do I navigate this? What do I really believe? And, a lot of times it's tough because sometimes voicing your opinion gets you in trouble. And I was known as a big mouth when I was a kid. I'd always, speak before raising my hand in school, or, just random outbursts. I was diagnosed with ADD, and I still struggle with a little bit of focus and attention issues sometimes. And sometimes I also have a side of me that wants to please everybody, that wants to not offend anybody. But I feel like this is the place where I can kind of speak my mind and do it as, honestly and succinctly as possible, and as rationally as possible, while still, believing ultimately that spirituality rules all. That in the end, we're all children of God, and we're all just trying to figure this life out. But there's things out there, that we can see that 99% of human beings consider evil and almost irredeemable. And I say almost as a key word. But I was, again, on Drudge Report today, and I noticed that, and I remember last week, there was this whole thing about Kanye and his anti-Semitic comments, and then Nick Fuentes, meeting with the president, and ex-president Trump, I should say, and saying, oh, I don't know anything about this guy. He just showed up with Kanye and, at Mar-a-Lago or whatever, and they had this discussion. And then noticing today on Drudge Report that there's a picture of Kanye West, now known as Ye or whatever. He's with this black face mask, fully covering his face, totally looking like a terrorist, next to Alex Jones. Now, I haven't discussed Alex Jones or pretty much anything political on this channel, but in my former life, here on Earth, of course, before I got into spirituality, really delved into it and opened up my mind about things and changed a lot of what I believe. In the past, I was a libertarian, and I was all about Ron Paul and, fighting the establishment, and, all about the First and Second Amendment, and, big time libertarian, conservative, fiscal conservative, but, social liberal. And I still kind of fall in that category most of the time, and just my own personal beliefs, and my own political beliefs. And I know that's, is separate from my spirituality in some sense. In some sense, it's a part of who I am as this human being, this avatar, this, whatever, this person in this matrix on Earth, So I understand that in the end, when you, pass away or, ascend or whatever, none of this stuff really means anything. It's just how we navigate, this realm of the matrix. And seeing that, this Alex Jones character now, and everything he's gone through with his defamation lawsuit, and I think over $1 billion of damages combined from a couple different cases against him for his comments on Sandy Hook in the past, and now seeing him with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes on his show, I mean, it's almost like they're purposely trying to trigger people. I mean, it's just, I see it from a million miles away, so I'm not triggered by it. I'm just more like, this is definitely strange. And I, of course, I'm a curious person, so I watched some of the live stream from the InfoWars channel. And, some of the stuff that Kanye was saying was, I would say, at best cringe and at worst disgusting, And, there's some things that he said that I really want to pick apart, that I really want to delve into. And one of the things he said was, there's, a lot of good things came from Hitler, especially Hitler, he said. When I first heard that, I cringed, and I still cringe. But he says several things like, I love everybody, and, through all the craziness that's going on in Ye's mind right now, he's just like, to me, I look at someone who's a little bit insane, maybe had a mental break, maybe he's on the, autistic spectrum. I don't know. I try not to judge people, but I can't tell where he's coming from. He seems a little off. He doesn't seem sane in my mind. He seems like he's all over the place, maybe on drugs. Who knows? He's got something going on. Something ain't, there's some screw looses upstairs. Again, this is just an observation, not a judgment on his, worth as a child of God or anything like that. But the comment of, even Hitler has something good to offer. And I made comments before. It doesn't matter if Hitler says 1 + 1 is 2. He's not wrong because he's Hitler. Or if Mother Teresa says 1 + 1 is 3, she's not right because she's Mother Teresa and supposedly one of the most, saintly people that ever lived. There is obviously, if you exist and you believe in a source of all consciousness, which I believe is what we call loosely God, that source of consciousness, you wouldn't exist without it. So if you exist and you have your own objective sense of consciousness, there's a reason you exist. There's a reason you're having your experience. I should say subjective, I think. I get those objective, subjective confused. But if you have your own conscious experience, I always kind of narrow it down to two things. Either you exist or you don't. There is no in between. So this Hitler character, maybe you believe, like I do, that he was just, playing a role, a part in a play. And he, of course, had free will from God and decided to shun that free will, ignore the leading of the Spirit, and do some pretty horrific things, especially to the Jewish people and other peoples as well. But the Jews are the most affected by his decision to, try to wipe out inferior races back in the 30s and 40s. So nobody on earth would defend those actions. But if you're in the spiritual camp, you have to at least have some kind of concept of, okay, this person at least was an innocent child of God at some point, when Hitler was a baby, when Hitler was a child, when Hitler was even growing up as a teenager. He hadn't sinned yet. He hadn't done anything wrong yet. There was a point in time when he was a good, relatively speaking, person before he delved into his evils and his, atheistic philosophies, and this whole idea of, the Aryan race and all these other races being inferior, and, him thinking he's doing God's work by wiping out all these inferior races because they're holding back humanity in progress. So whatever his manifesto in his mind was, I don't know. I'm just kind of speaking off my perspective of the whole situation. So the problem is not so much that I think that there was at least, if not is, even if it's a tiny degree of goodness in Hitler, it's the way that Kanye West portrayed it, juxtaposing it against what the Jewish people have supposedly done to him, with contracts and stuff like that, and just ruining his life and trying to control his life. And, I know there's this feeling about the Jewish people, like this kind of bitterness towards them because they kind of run the world, or, parts of the world. They're kind of like part of the elite. And, a lot of smart people come from the Jewish nation, from Israel. And, you can call that genetics, you can call that luck, you can just call that, maybe they're being facilitated because, what happened to them, thousands of years ago, losing their homeland and then getting it back in 1947 or 9, I forget which one, getting their homeland back, and then, the United States backing them. And because they're part of the Judeo-Christian, whole scheme of things, of course, the United States is going to defend them versus other Arab nations who want to destroy them and, have, more Muslim beliefs. Which is a lot of times antithetical to Judeo-Christian beliefs. So, of course, the United States is going to back Israel, and try to defend them and help them out. So there's that whole, at least how I perceive things, kind of bitterness and hatred towards the Jews for, what they've been doing with, a lot of them, rising up to positions of power and money and maybe even the elite levels, of control and power in the world. So, and of course, maybe the way they're handling the whole situation with, the Gaza Strip and Palestine and what have you. There's definitely a lot of people who are not happy with the Jewish people. And I don't know what the Jews have done specifically to Kanye West. I don't know the details of it, but for him to make a comment like that, to say, it's the way he did it, the way he went about it, superimposed on his crazy persona. He's acting crazy and just acting like unhinged, and even like making like it'll sound like Elmo sounds about Prime Minister Netanyahu. Like he's just like acting bat crap crazy, and then saying I love everyone, and and Hitler's good and blah blah blah, and the Jews did this, did the other thing. So when you compare a person that everybody knows made some really horrific decisions and made some really, really just disgusting things against the Jewish people, to the Jewish people who have been, who went through the Holocaust, and you have a Holocaust denier, on there as well. It's like, okay, you can't say that God loves someone at the expense of someone else. Whether that person that you're saying is loved was good in the eyes of most or bad in the eyes of most, it makes no difference. There's no sacrifice when it comes to love. And this is, kind of a concept I'm loosely stealing from A Course in Miracles. Forgiveness is complete. So if you're at the point where, you as a person, especially as a Jewish person maybe, and you've been able to forgive, Hitler even for the evil things he perpetrated against your race, I'm sure you've experienced some relief and some peace for that decision. Even though as a human being he didn't deserve that forgiveness, you deserved to forgive for what the peace it brought to you. It's not at the expense of the Jewish people or even yourself as a Jewish person or anybody else. It's your own personal decision, the point of enlightenment you've gotten to, and you can't bequeath that to somebody else. You can't force it onto somebody else. And if you really were, I think, feeling that sense of forgiveness for this Hitler character, or any character for that matter, that was evil and perpetrated the deaths of millions of people, you're not to compare that to something else. Not to or at the expense of some other group of people. There is no loss. Like if you feel peace within yourself, then you didn't have to steal that from somebody else. That you worked that out in your own spirit, in your own soul. Could Kanye West somehow have just botched terribly what he was trying to say? I don't know, because the way I see his behavior, besides those couple of comments that seem to be almost spiritually enlightened, like, oh yeah, Hitler's, some goodness in Hitler, and I love the Jewish people. But when you have all these other, anti-Semitic comments surrounding that, and all these crazy actions and antics that you've been doing, and these publicity stunts, and I've seen some of his music videos. I mean, he's definitely, if I was still a Christian, I would say this guy does not represent what I think Christians should represent or proclaim to represent. He doesn't seem to act Christ-like. So it's hard to understand where this guy is coming from. So what am I trying to get at on this video? I do think there is a point where you can say, from a holistic standpoint, from a spiritual perspective, not from an earthly perspective, but if you realize a couple of things, that one, we're all born innocent children of God, and two, we're all playing some kind of role we don't truly understand. We're behind the veil. We don't know, we don't experience connection or unity with the universe. And so we feel like sometimes us against the world, and we can come up with these crazy ideas and ideologies like, I'm part of a certain race of people that is superior to everybody else. Like, you can get really deep into the mire, into this crazy matrix that we live in, and come up with some crazy beliefs and think you're right about them and be completely deluded and self-deluded nonetheless, like Hitler. And, it makes some really horrible decisions. And the question is a person like that redeemable? That's really what I want to get to, because I've pondered this many times throughout my life. Some of the worst, most horrific people. I try to put myself in their shoes and say, man, I just did this really horrific act, and now the law is holding me accountable. I'm going to jail the rest of my life, Or, even worse, part of the Christian religion, the belief is that when you die, if you're in sin and you're not saved, you're going to hell and you're going to burn for all eternity. In fact, that whole concept of, eternal torment is what started me on my spiritual journey to look outside of the Bible, outside of Christianity, and try to search on my own what this God of love supposedly is that would torment someone for all of eternity. So the question is to people out there that aren't ready for a sane person saying Hitler, there's some good in Hitler, and maybe dare I say at some point he could be forgiven for what he did if he paid enough, penance or enough repentance, who knows, but I'm sure there's countless people who are not ready for that kind of integration inside themselves, and I can't even say that I'm fully at that point, but I understand the concept. I understand the concept that we're behind the veil of forgetfulness, and we do a lot of things that are sometimes evil or just downright horrific and sinful. But, when I hear about God's unconditional love, supposedly everyone can be forgiven. So I understand that concept, and I guess I've lived a life of mostly boring, mostly boring life. I haven't done anything horrific to need to be forgiven from, so I can't understand that. But I have seen other people that have been extremely hurt and broken and just destroyed over some horrific things people have done to them, like molestation and murder and just psychological, torture, whatever the case may be. There's been a lot of things that have done to people that they get to the point where they just say that person is hopeless, irredeemable. They deserve to go to hell and be tormented forever. Throw them in jail. Throw away the key, and then when they die, they're gonna burn forever. And have you ever really sat and thought about what you're actually asking for? Have you actually thought about what that the person did? They thought they were right, or they were screwed up in the head, because no one who knows the truth, who's enlightened, would do such things. So understand that. And I'm not justifying any of the behavior that Hitler or any of these other really terrible people have done to perpetrate unimaginable suffering on the human race. But at what point, this is the question I want to ask, at what point have they paid their debt to society, to the world, to even the universe, to God himself? Maybe 100,000 years of being tormented by flames and pitchforks, or maybe 1,000,000 years of Googleplex years. At what point have they paid that price? Is that person completely irredeemably hopeless? What if you woke up one day and you thought everything was okay, and someone told you had a head injury, and you were like, oh, I don't remember most of my past. And then your memory started coming back to you, and you realized you had done something quite heinous and terrible towards one or more people in your life. And then you realize, shoot, there's going to be some accountability for this, and you're going to feel massive amounts of guilt. It's like, at that point in time, would you still ask God, the universe, society, whomever you hurt, for forgiveness? Do you think you'd be worthy of such forgiveness, or at least that chance to pay penance, to earn back your equal standing with everybody else? So that's really the juxtaposition of this whole video, is to get people to think, okay, you may not be ready to forgive Hitler. Kanye West, it's kind of, not really sure, if he's forgiven Hitler at the expense of the Jewish people. I don't know what's going on inside his head, but it just definitely, it prompted this thought in my mind of, it seems like there's a lot of people out there who will, who are just so willing to, because they've been hurt so badly by someone, just dish it out 10 times worse. In the Old Testament, if you're a Christian, you know about the whole idea of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, life for life, really. Dishing out exactly what you dished, back at you, equal. And it seems like, and Jordan Peterson did a lecture on this, where he's like, you kill one of my family members, I'm going to come back and kill 2 of yours, and then you're going to come back and kill 4 of mine, and just exponentially increases. Like, when does the craziness stop? At what point, do we stop wanting to, fight fire with fire and cause and keep causing more pain, when intrinsically that if you really want the craziness to stop, it's got to take love, unconditional love, radical love, And I think that it's people like Hitler and other people like maybe child molesters, or wife beaters, or serial killers, whatever. The reason why they're doing what they're doing is because they have such a profound lack of love for self, and because of that, they have a profound lack of love for other people. No sympathy. They're sociopathic. They just don't care. They've gone completely insane relationally, and it took, and that's why the whole story of Jesus and dying on the cross and forgiving his enemies and rising from the dead, that is such a huge story, such a massive testament to God's unconditional love, because it's literally the worst possible thing that can happen to someone, and yet he forgave them, and he even said, God still loves you, forgive them, for they know not what they do. These people know not what they do, and the only thing that's going to save you from further pain and torment is forgiveness. And I know most people are not ready for that. It's hard even for me to say that, because I feel there's going to be people out there saying, but every time you say but, you prolong your sentence along with theirs. Thanks, and God bless.